Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. An emergency meeting of world leaders from the G7 richest nations will discuss the crisis in Afghanistan.
Boris Johnson will ask the US President to delay the withdrawal of American troops beyond the deadline at the end of the month.
Good morning. Protecting shop workers. From today, a new law in Scotland makes abuse against retail staff a specific offence. So I'll look at calls for the same level of protection to apply in other parts of the UK.
Despite concerns about COVID and a one-year delay, the Tokyo Paralympics get underway today. We're live in Japan to look ahead to 2 weeks of elite sport.
Good morning. West Ham go top after thrashing Leicester City. Mikel Antonio becoming the club's record scorer in the Premier League and celebrating with a cardboard cutout of himself.
Where the weeds are running wild, how a decision to stop using weed killer has left one local council in a tangle.
Good morning from the roof of Broadcasting House in London. Today we're starting off with some low clouds, some mist and fog in places. Most of that will lift. Many of us will have some sunshine, but some of it will cling to the coasts and that will hold back the temperatures there. I'll have all the details in about 25 minutes.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 24th of August. Our top story for you. The Prime Minister will chair crisis talks with the G7 nations today as they race to evacuate people from Afghanistan.
It's expected Boris Johnson will use the virtual meeting to ask US President Joe Biden to extend the deadline beyond the 31st of August. The Taliban say any delay would be a violation of the agreement with the US. Helen Catt has more.
As thousands continue to try to flee Afghanistan, the leaders of the G7 nations, which include the US, France and Germany, will hold an emergency virtual meeting to address the crisis. It's likely to be very different in tone from when they met in person in Cornwall in June. The American President Joe Biden is under pressure not to withdraw his troops from Kabul airport on the 31st of August as planned. Downing Street said Boris Johnson and Mr Biden agreed in a call last night to continue working together to enable people to leave, including after the first phase of the evacuation. It didn't say if moving the date had been discussed. But the Prime Minister is expected to ask him for more time to allow more people to get out. The government has already said British troops will have to leave when the US does. The White House has so far not said whether it will extend the deadline or not.
We are in talks with the Taliban on a daily basis through both political and security channels. We believe that we have time between now and the 31st to get out any American who wants to get out.
The G7 won't just cover the situation at the airport, though. Boris Johnson is expected to ask the other countries to match the UK's promises on sending aid and resettling refugees. The UK has said it will take in 20,000 Afghans over the next 5 years. The leaders are also expected to recommit to safeguarding the rights of women and minorities and girls' education in Afghanistan, and to making sure any new government sticks to its international obligations. Speaking ahead of the meeting, Boris Johnson said the Taliban would be judged by their deeds and not their words. The G7 may well face the same expectation. Helen Catt, BBC News, Westminster.
Now, in the early hours of this morning, another military flight carrying evacuees arrived into the UK from Kabul.
Passengers, including small children, were greeted by ground crew as they made their way from the aircraft. More than 7,000 people have arrived from Kabul in the last 10 days. Well, let's speak now to our political correspondent, Damien Grammaticus, who is live in Westminster this morning. Morning to you. This is a crucial 24 hours ahead.
Morning, Dan. It is. I mean, this is a moment when not just the UK, but also France, Germany, others are expected to ask or sit around the table with Joe Biden virtually over a video conference being chaired by Boris Johnson and put their view that the US should try to keep its troops longer at that airport in Kabul. But it's a difficult moment because other than doing that, the UK has few levers to pull at this stage. And even asking Joe Biden that is in itself sort of problematic because the US president has been making clear he doesn't want to stay longer. To do so requires him to talk to the Taliban. The Taliban have been saying they don't want to see troops staying longer either. So yesterday when I asked the Prime Minister's official spokesman what's the point of asking if the Taliban aren't clear, he said, well, it's entirely right. We do everything possible to get as many people out as we can. And because we're in this situation now, of course, where there are many, many thousands on the ground in Kabul who have not been got out, who are scrambling, trying to get to that airport. So we know there was that conversation last night between Boris Johnson and Joe Biden. No indications there that the US president might look to extend time on the ground. Actually, what the statement coming out of that said was that the two leaders talked about ways to get people out after that deadline. And we know the UK has been talking about possibly setting up some sort of process where Afghans could eventually leave Afghanistan after the 31st of August, go to neighbouring countries and somehow from there apply to come to the UK. But when asked for details, again, the UK government had few to give, simply saying, well, there may be, that was something under discussion, there may be details in future. So all eyes today, will the Americans stay longer, but really a very serious problem, even if they commit to extending for a few days.
OK, Damien, thank you for that. Much to think about. And we'll be discussing some of those issues with the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, who's going to be with us at 7:30 this morning.
Now, the number of online grooming crimes recorded by police in England and Wales has jumped by nearly 70% in 3 years. Figures obtained by the children's charity, the NSPCC, show that Facebook-owned Instagram was the platform most commonly used by groomers. The charity has urged the government to strengthen its plans for internet regulation.
We know that groomers are able to exploit the design features of these sites to ruthless effect, to be able to contact large numbers of children at scale with ease. And grooming starts with a friend request, with the expectation that just a relatively small number of children have to click yes to a friend request from an abuser, and then the grooming process starts.
3 people have died and a 4th has been seriously injured in an accident on the M25 in Essex last night. A car, a minibus and a lorry were involved in a collision near Waltham Abbey. 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of causing death and serious injury by dangerous driving.
More than 800 migrants crossed the English Channel to the UK on Saturday, setting a new record for the most crossings in a single day. The French authorities stopped almost 200 others crossing the English Channel. Nearly 12,500 people have made the journey so far this year. Officials say there are safe and legal routes for migrants and they were working to prevent dangerous crossings.
People in England who need care are having to pay thousands of pounds extra a year to fund it. This is according to new BBC research.
In half of the 83 areas which responded to a BBC request, bills for people needing support had risen 10% or more over 2 years. The government says it has put extra money into the care system. Our social affairs correspondent, Alison Holt, has more.
These are the things that make a huge difference to Saskia's life, her football and her own flat. She has a learning disability and to live independently she relies on help from her local council.
I get support workers coming to support me and cook. If it wasn't for them coming in, I would have struggled big time.
Her mum looks after her finances.
This was my appeal against the increased charges.
She was horrified when the amount Saskia was expected to contribute to her care from her benefits suddenly increased from £92 a month to more than £500 a month.
When Mum told me, she just burst out into tears and I was like, I hate seeing my mum cry.
The family also says £1,500 was taken from Saskia's account without warning to cover backdated charges.
Without my intervention, she wouldn't have had any food that week. She wouldn't have been able to pay her gas, electricity or water bills.
The BBC asked councils in England about increases in care charges. 83 responded. In the last 2 years, they've increased the money they collect from people needing care by £51 million, the equivalent of a 13% rise in costs for each person getting support. And 6 councils have doubled the money they raise from community-based learning disability services.
This is another sign that social care is in crisis and it needs more money, it needs proper reform. This is simply wrong, that people who are the least well off in society are being expected to make up the shortfall when this money should come from government.
Councils acknowledge that the lives of people like Saskia are being squeezed, but insist their finances are so tight they have few options. The government says it's put extra money into adult social care and will publish plans for reforms soon. Alison Holt, BBC News.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.